Welcome to the Thrive in the Workplace podcast, brought to you by The Wellness Theory in partnership with B1G1 Business for Good. This podcast is all about uplifting organisations to thrive when it comes to all things workplace wellbeing. From organisational culture, the most effective wellness campaigns you can imagine, and integrating social good. You will find insights, inspiration and information that supports leaders at all levels to implement best practices to improve engagement, performance and vitality within the workforce. We believe that workplaces can and should be healthy and sustainable for both the workforce, the bottom line and the community. And in this podcast, we'll show you how. And just so you know, for every listen this podcast gets, we'll be donating to a life-saving project aligned with the UN 2030 global goals. So thank you for being here and continuing the ripple effect. Without further ado, join us to thrive in the workplace and become a force for good in the world. Welcome to the show, Carol. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so happy that you're here because you talk about a topic that is so important, but is so often overlooked at an individual standpoint, but also as just a well-being piece of the organizational puzzle that exists in the corporate world as well. So, I don't even know where to begin with you. So let's just start at the beginning with tell our listeners a little bit about you and, what it is you do and what's led you to what you do.
Okay. So, and thank you for letting me talk about it, because you're right, we don't talk about money enough, but I love to talk about it. So I'm very happy to be here. So about me, I am a chartered accountant by trade. I had a very corporate career in Europe and here in the Middle East. I've been here for 14 years now. Big Four trained, then went into industry where I was regional CFO, head of finance. Very lucky to have a really great career. And when you think about it from many aspects, and even the industries that I worked in were very male dominated. So insurance, consulting, armed protection, that kind of area. And I was a woman in the Middle East in finance, but I had a really great career. I was blessed and I'm very grateful for that. But to answer your question, how did I get to what I'm doing? I realized that, especially in my last role, it was an amazing company surrounded by amazing people, well paid, great work-life balance for finance, which is rare. And I wasn't happy. So that's when, almost 4 years ago now, I finished up in that company and decided it was time to do something different. So I took a little bit of time out to figure out what that is. And that's when I came up with my business. And my business really is centered around taking the shame, anxiety, the worry, the stress out of money. And that takes many forms, because it is often reported as the number one cause of stress worldwide. Yep. It is probably one of the things we talk about least in an honest and vulnerable way, but yet it's probably the thing we deal with most every day. If you think about it, how many decisions do you make every day that are not impacted by money? I would say almost none. But yet it's this big taboo. And I realized that very quickly, and I wanted to do something that I was helping people, that I could use my skill set, and that I could work for myself. And that's why I do what I do. So I help people with everything from their money mindsets, the energy around money, to financial literacy, to the practical tools and how to combine them to have, really the goal is financial. It is a major part of our wellness pillars. Thankfully, more recently, it's been recognized more and more, but we've a bit to go still to be open to even talking about money, especially, in certain circumstances.
Yeah, definitely. And it's so good that you're pioneering this and you're championing it, because you've got more than enough expertise and, experience from your kind of corporate days as well, combining that into now your business, which is called Conscious Finance Coaching, right? Yeah. And we need to become more conscious of it as individuals. I didn't even really, for me personally, I didn't realize I even had any issues when it come to finances, when it come to my relationship with it, because it was just this thing that was in my life every day until I became more self-aware and became conscious of then, how do I feel about it? Why am I making the decision that I'm making? Why did I choose to max out that credit card for that reason in that moment of my life, when that was probably the most stupid decision I could have made now in hindsight? These silly things, but they leave a signature on our body, right? And on our mind, and how we then like really try to address it and show up in life. And so there's so many different facets of how financial well-being is playing a part. And you're absolutely right in what you said about finance being one of the stressors. A questionnaire that we have, particularly for our coaching line of our business, is understanding people's stress and understanding what is the thing that's stressing them out the most. And finance is always in that top, always. And it's having a massive knock-on effect to then how they show up in relationships, how honest they are with people that they care about, how honest they are, and how satisfied they are in a work situation. So if you had to define financial wellness, like what is that?
So for me, financial wellness is when all aspects of your financial life are aligned and supporting you to live a life in line with your values, and that leads to a fulfilling life. So if I break that down, very often we treat money as something that is either bad or the root of all evil, those kind of things. But for me, it's just an energy. It's something that we need to live our daily lives. And when we control it rather than letting it control us, it's just a tool for us to do what we want to do in life. So when we come at it from that side, that's when financial wellness starts kind of manifesting itself in our lives, that we're not working for it, it's working for us. And that's when our nervous systems calm down, our stress levels reduce, because it's that sense of empowerment and control. We can't always be in control of what happens, but when we can't always control what happens, but we can feel like we're in control of what we're doing with our money. And that's when we start feeling financially well. And it's really just aligning our money with our values, like using our money to do what's important to us in life.
I think it's sometimes a challenge because money and finance can sometimes be really overcomplicated, and therefore it's easier for people to almost like bury their head in the sand and not ignore it, but just think about it as minimally as they can. Most of us, we learn maths at school, but not really in a financial context. We didn't learn about financial literacy. We definitely didn't learn about our core values, not in my school system. To bring those two together, it makes perfect sense that then calms our nervous system. It puts our mind at ease so that we can then be well, right? So what would you say some of the biggest myths are about finances? Let's maybe just start there. Let's bust some myths and then dive a little bit deeper into how to practically apply financial.
Well, one is the one you touched on, that you have to be good at maths to be good at money. No, you don't. It helps, of course it helps, but we all have calculators in our pockets, and our decisions that we're making at money are rarely maths driven. It's emotional. That's a myth, that it's very structured and mathematical, and there's a hard and fast right and wrong. Not true. That it is for others. One of the big things that I see, especially in women, when it comes to money, is, other people are just better at it than me. I couldn't possibly be good with money. That we are conditioned to believe that we are just not capable of being good with money. And the other big one is that it's so complicated. And you're right, like you said, I think the finance industry has done an amazing job of making it feel complicated and seem complicated. And of course, there's complicated elements of it. If you're going to go into derivatives and fancy investments, that does become quite complex. But the essentials and the basics of money management on a daily basis really isn't complex. And actually, the least complex it is, the more beneficial it is. So that's the biggest ones. And I think because we then feel like it is very complex, and the reason why we don't address it very often is we procrastinate, because we know it's there. The vast majority of my clients will say, I've been burying my head in the sand about this for so long, because it just felt overwhelming. Because I spoke to my sister, my brother, my dad, my friend, I watched this thing on TikTok, I've did this other thing, and they all told me different things. They all said I should do this, or I should do that. And then we procrastinate because it's too much. But actually, what I call that is, that's where we go, they're just ideas. They all probably, maybe not all, but most of them will have legitimacy in their own right. But that's that person's value system. That's what's important to them. What you need to do is go, does that work for me? Does that get me to where I want to be? No. Okay, great. That's good for them, but I'm going to do something else. And that helps with the procrastination. But we are, it's because we're bamboozled with all of this complicated and options and different opinions. People are very opinionated when they do talk about money. And that's what drives that view that, oh, it's not for me. That's for other people who are smarter than me, better than me, wiser than me, whatever that might be.
And when we buy into those myths that you've just shared, we then we allow it to be very vague, a vague part of our life. But yet we're feeling very real feelings about it, even though we're making the problem quite vague. And what I've noticed, and what a lot of people speak about when we do employee well-being surveys, when it comes a little bit around the finance side, is we're asking them, like, how are you feeling around your financial situation? Do you feel like you're fairly paid, for example? Questions similar to this. And chances are, like most of the time, the answer is no, like they should be getting paid more. And actually, if you really dive into a deeper conversation with them, or just sit into a focus group and listen to the discussion and around money when that topic comes up, it's so interesting how them wanting a pay rise, or them feeling like they should be compensated in this way or that way, isn't connected and anchored and rooted into their reality. Because when there's follow-up questions in and around, do you know how much you want to earn by the end of the year? How much do you need to live the life that you want to live? They're like, I don't know, I've never thought about it. It's like, well, how do you know you need a pay rise? Like, you might be earning more enough to be happy. Exactly. I just want more. And when we operate from that space, there's that scarcity mindset in play, right? It's like, that person's getting more than me. I can't do this. Can I do that? And that's when we're operating in fear, which then obviously overspills into every area of life, but can really show harshly in a competitive work environment. So I would love to hear your insights on that.
Yes. I mean, that really just sums it up. What's driving the stress as well, that need for more, but not knowing why you need more. And it's almost like, I will be happier when, I will be able to do things when, but without any clarity about, like you said, well, what is it costing me to live right now? How am I spending my money right now? Maybe what I have actually is enough. If I start aligning it with my values, I'm more conscious with how I use my money. Like I talk a lot about, it's not about what you earn, it's what you do with what you earn. Because no matter how many zeros you have, if you're not rooted in that value system and very conscious and clear about what you're doing with your money right now, your problems will just expand. I don't know if you ever come across the research, I think it's called the Parkinson's law. Where it applies to, when we fill a task, and like it absolutely applies to money. Like that person will sit there and go, when I earn X amount more, then I will. But they'll earn that X amount more, and it won't be enough. And it won't be enough because their lifestyle will creep, because the habits are not healthy. And then they'll always wonder, and that's driving the stress. And a lot of people think that's greed. It's rarely greed. It's just that need for relief. When I have more, it'll be less stress. When I have more, I'll be able to do these things. But actually, we can do a lot more with what we currently have when we're more conscious about it. And we're not taught that. We're always taught, ask for more, have more, get more when you have more. And the problem is that carrot never stops moving.
Yeah.
When I have more, I'll reach that. And there's a survey, I think it's something like, when employees get salary increases, they're only satisfied for something like 3 days.
Yeah.
And then it's like the next one. Then I want the next one, because unless it has a purpose, and I talk about this a lot, especially with all of your money, but especially with your savings, that scarcity mindset can drive hoarding with your money. I need to save, or it could be I need more, because it's never enough. But never enough for what? Yeah. If you don't have a purpose for your money, if you don't have a purpose for your saving, whether you have 1,000 or 100,000 sitting in a bank account, it's going to feel the same to you. Because it's never going to be enough, because you don't know what it's for, and it's not attached to anything of value to you, and you're trying to it's like emotional eating. We're trying to fill a void with food that actually food is not going to fill it, or you'll have maybe an instant few seconds of, ooh, that feels good, and then what's next?
Yeah,
money is exactly the same. If that's what you're if that's what you're placing your sense of achievement or value or happiness on, when you have more, that more never stops moving ahead. It doesn't. And that's also when keeping up with the Joneses comes in.
Yeah.
Because you're comparing yourself. They look happy. I want that. Yeah. But do you really?
Exactly.
Do you really?
If you really like looked and seen what you really want, you know, it fascinates me, it really does, because like it's easy, I think, when you're on the other side of it to see it, but when you're in it, it can be really, really tough. So, and I think we end up setting ourselves up for failure in many ways, right? So we think that striving for more is the way forward, like that is the way to go. But what that does, sets up individuals to fail often, but it also sets up organizations to fail to some extent as well, because they can't keep promoting everyone and they can't keep giving everybody pay rises. Look at the economy, look at the way businesses are run. Like, it's not practical to do that in the same amounts that individuals are demanding. And I think it's become more and more apparent that, you know, there is a lot more opportunity now. The world's open with the internet. People can earn more money here, there, and everywhere, and they try and have these side hustles, but then that's then affecting workplace performance, where they're perhaps spending their full time. And there's, I think, such a opportunity for companies to start to mitigate some of these issues with their employees, because it's them that will benefit in the long term. If they know that their employees are happy and aligned when it comes to financially, they're not going to get every employee banging on the leader's door saying, I want a pay rise, when's my next, increase?
Yeah, and I'm laughing. Some corporates have said one of their fears of having someone to come in and talk to, I just get a line of people outside my door asking for more money. And actually it'll probably be the opposite. People will feel more satisfied with what they have, or if they do come asking for more, it's from a more grounded place of, actually, my role maybe is at a level where it should be earning this amount of money, rather than I have to have that lack you need to give to me that never stops. That actually what I do exactly is help people manage the money they have better, so that they don't have that constant stress and need for, I need more, I can only do better if I have more. So yeah, it is, but there is that fear. Absolutely, I've had that a few times. Oh, won't they just come looking for more money? And this is real issues. But no.
Right? But if you flip it on its head and then go back to the why is it happening in the first place, and like you said, it's very emotional. So by just giving somebody a financial, physical fix and increasing the number on their wage slip or in their bank account isn't going to resolve the emotional issue. Like, have it for a leader to be conscious enough to say, okay, well, if I understand what's emotionally driving my employees, perhaps they'll become more aligned and more at ease, and they're going to then be able to use all of that pent up stressful energy that they're wasting on lack into more creative things. When we're in that stress state, we're contracting, right? We're almost like looking around and on alert and like, oh, well, I can't share that idea in case that person takes it, and if that person takes it, they might get the pay rise and I need that pay rise, and that this whole like hustly bustly toxicity starts to creep into culture, and it's unnecessary.
It is, and it's toxic.
Yes, exactly, toxic.
Yeah, it really is. And a lot of the time it is driven by, and we say it driven by money. And I think we need to be careful with this as well, because then there's a lot of a judgment attached to that. Oh, they're money grabbing, they only care about money. But back to the emotional piece, usually what's underpinning that need for more money or that drive for more money is an emotion of lack, insecurity. More money is more security, or more money will be my self-worth. If I earn more, then I'm more worthy. Therefore, I am a better provider. I am, successful. So it's not necessarily the money itself. It's what the emotion attached to that money is giving that person. And that's why it's really important to look at what's underpinning those behaviors. Why are people looking for more? And sometimes it is they're underpaid, and we can't deny that. But that's a separate situation to just, I need more. I need more. Why do you need more? And that's where I love when companies allow me to come in from that prospect, that mindset, to just bring it back to Okay, well, what is your value system? What are your goals? What do you do with your money right now? How is your money adding to your life right now? What is the income that you currently have allowing you to do that a lot of the time we're not even recognizing? We're not focused on, oh, actually what I have gives me a lot. Yeah. And even that in itself can go, oh, okay, right. I'm constantly looking for, it's not enough. But if I look at now, I go, actually, I have a home, I have this, I have that, I can do this, I can travel, I can, whatever it is that a person wants to do. They're like, oh, okay. And immediately you can just see them going, oh,
they can breathe.
Okay, I can breathe. Yeah. I can breathe. This is a different perspective. And then opening up, it's really important to open up to that emotional side of it. What is your emotional attachment to money? Why do you want more? It's rarely actually about the money itself. It's what they think the money will give them.
When you go into companies and deliver these sessions, how many people in the room are switched on to this and are very self-aware and conscious when it comes to money, if any?
I would say the minority. Largely the feedback is, I've never thought of it like this before.
Yeah.
Like, as in, and that's why I love the in-person sessions, especially because I can see their faces, I can see their body language, and you can see, the thought process going, and then afterwards the questions that come up, and yeah, honestly, usually it's a case of, I've never thought about money like this before, because a lot of the time I'm just like, can you give me a budget? Can you send me a budget? How do I save? Tell me what to do to pay off debt. And very tense, that sense of like stress. But actually afterwards, yeah, it is very like, oh, okay, this is a whole new way of looking at money. And it makes sense. You can almost see like the puzzle pieces forming in people's, like, you can see it on their face. They're like, oh, okay, right, my value system, I get to choose. This is where I can release that need to compete, to compare, to feel something that, I constantly talk about the shoulds money. I can let them all go and then go home and focus on, right, what's important to me, and focus on that. And it's freeing. What a lot of people come back and say, it's so freeing to think about money in this way, and motivating and exciting, rather than a chore and boring and complicated.
What are some of the questions that people ask you when they're going through that process that perhaps gets them a little bit stuck in that process?
Probably the most common question I get is about credit cards, actually. Very practical. And then after that, when it comes to a mindset piece, a lot of the time it's actually, because it's so new to them, I get the questions afterwards. So I'll have someone book in, like I offer a free 20-minute chat, and they'll book in and do a follow-up then, because like they've had to process it first. Another question I get that's quite common related to the emotional side of it is how to talk to others about money, be it your partner, your children, your family, because they're like, oh, this is an interesting thing. I really like this idea. Now, how can I basically embody this and talk to the important people in my life about this way of money? And then sometimes, because usually it's a group, so we don't go obviously into too much detail on individuals unless they volunteer, and obviously it can be very personal. Questions around, oh, I grew up on this, and this happened in my life. Do you think this is why I behave this way about money? Do you think this is why? So they start thinking about their money experiences, any trauma they had, what their life was like growing up, anything happened with their parents, what experiences they had. They can have questions around, how is that impacting what I do? So it's very varied, because that's the thing, it's money, it's so personal.
It is, and I don't think it's often looked through the lens of it being personal. It's just this thing that's true. We live in a world where there's money, and we will have to figure it out.
And you should know the amount of people who say, like, they're coming to me and they're like, I'm so embarrassed, I don't want anyone to know, because everybody else seems to know what to do and I don't. I just don't. And I'm like, no one was born with the playbook. Yeah. There is this, and there is a lot of shaming language out there, where people will say to me at my job, like I've had individuals say, do people really need this? Like, surely you just spend less than you earn. That's simple. Like, well, that's like saying to someone who's like trying to lose weight and they say, oh, just eat less. Or I want to get fit, just go for a run. That's simple. It's not that simple.
So if there's somebody listening to this that is perhaps an influential leader in their organization and they're still in that mindset of, do people really need this? Do my employees need this? Is this something I really need to be paying attention to? What do you say to them?
Yes, you do.
Yeah.
You do. You know, I think it is, and especially now, you know, people are probably as stressed as they have been in very recent years. You know, with inflation has been increasing, prices are going up globally. No matter where you are, people are talking about the cost of living right now. You know, areas where there is specific, you know, there is, you know, a real sense of stress around money, and that will play out in your employees. I mean, there's so many studies out there as well where the amount of absenteeism driven by financial stress, the amount of time employees are spending at their desk, either worrying about money or dealing with money issues. You know, it's what's affecting their personal life. You know, so like it is often quoted as one of the top three reasons for divorce. You know, so that's happening in someone's personal life and it's feeding into how they're performing at work and how they're turning up at work. I think we cannot underestimate, and it's like a silent thing that we don't talk about. You know, we really don't talk about it enough. There's still a lot of shaming around it. And I think even if you are an employer who prides yourself on paying your employees very well, there's a gap between paying them very well and enabling them or to support them to manage that money well. Because when they can manage that money well, that's when they turn up happier, more loyal, more productive, like you said, more creative, they're less stressed, they're calmer, more collaborative individuals. And you know, no matter what size operation you have, whether it's 2 employees or 20,000 employees, I seriously doubt there's any organization that can sit there and say, my employees don't have financial stress.
Yeah, 100%. I think you highlight a really important piece there. Is it's one thing to pay your employees well, but then teach them what to do with that money is really important. Not telling them what to do, but giving them the basic skills. I remember there was a time in my career I got a pay rise and it was the most money I'd ever had, and I wasted it month after month after month until I learned my lesson. And I could have learned that way sooner had I had some support from the workplace, because I didn't get that support at school. I didn't get that support from my family home. Unless I was really interested in money, which I wasn't really, like to learn about and understand it, I wouldn't be reading a book about it, listening to something about it. So therefore, the only other place for me really to learn about it would be the workplace. And it wasn't there. It wasn't present. And I can only imagine then what that feels like when you're on the other side of the coin and you're not being paid well. So perhaps you're not being underpaid and you don't know what to do with your money, right, in the most effective way. That just puts us into even more of a stress state, and it puts your nervous person, your mental health under even more strain. And it's really tricky. So if there's somebody listening to this that perhaps is in that space, they don't know how to perhaps manage their money. They know how much they've got. They've listened to a speak today and they're like, yes, Carol, you've got me. I understand there's more to this than perhaps what I've been paying attention to. What do I do with it? What do I do with this whole money thing then? Now I'm aware of it.
Yeah. And you know, this applies regardless of your money situation. So, you know, if you are in a position where you maybe have debt and you've made some choices that in hindsight you feel like I could have made a better choice there, and you ended up with debt in a difficult situation. Most people think the answer is more money. If I had more money, I can solve this. More money might fix it like that in the short term, but it'll just happen again. So it will happen again until you understand money, until you understand your habits. On the other side of that, you know, I have a lot of clients who are C-suite individuals who have money, who are earning well. And I would say, you know, I have people from both ends of that kind of sense of debt versus having lots of money in the bank, equally stressed, because there is then that responsibility of, I have this level of money, I cannot make a wrong decision, and we procrastinate and we freeze, or else there's shame and anxiety around that. Like, I'm sitting in this position and my friend is maybe in this position and I am so ashamed And yet I feel like I'm not what I should be with money. I don't feel happy. I don't have the great life. I don't, because they're still sitting in that lack and fear. What I would say to both individuals is, first of all, no matter what, there is an answer. There's always an answer, especially with debt. It can get very toxic, and for men in particular, if they feel like there's no way out, that can get quite dangerous. So there's always a way out. The second thing is get clarity. Clarity is your best friend when it comes to money. I regularly say money loves clarity. So sit down and actually, rather than thinking I need more, I need the answer outside, look at what's happening right now from two angles. One, what is my cost of living? What am I spending every month? Take out those credit card statements, let's say, if that's how you spend your money. And that could be a very vulnerable and scary place for a lot of people, but it's worth it. Look at it. Where's your money going? Is there any leakages? Because sometimes, like very often, people will say to me, I earn a good salary, don't have a crazy lifestyle, I'm quite sensible, but money just seems to fall through my fingers. Why am I not able to save more? And I ask, do you ever look at where you spent your money for the last month? Oh, no, I'm terrified. Because sometimes we have, we can't run spreadsheets in our brains. We can't know how everything adds up. And sometimes there's frauds and things going through there that we're just hemorrhaging money we're not even aware of. So we need to get that clarity. Every single person who does this, and a lot of the reason to me is to kind of hold their hand through that process, because they're scared. They're scared of what they're going to see. They're feeling very vulnerable. So we go through that process with very much of a lens of, let's just have a look. Let's see what's happening here, figure out what we're happy with, what we're not happy with. Thankfully, and there's research behind this as well that shows most people think they're worse off than they actually are. Like 70% of people, when they look at their financials, are actually better off than they feared. So they're sitting in this fear and this stress of like, oh, it's horrendous, and you're trying to bury it and move on and forget about it, but it's always there. It never goes away. It's always there. And then they look at it and they go, oh, it's not that bad. And I was stressed for so long. For the 30% who like, okay, maybe it is as bad as I expected, every single person who I know, I'm so glad I did this. I already feel better. Because now I'm not second guessing. I'm not wondering what if. I'm not, because we're humans, right? We have that negativity bias. Especially with finances, with money. The research shows as well that we have an even stronger negativity bias when it comes to money if we feel like we're in a bad situation. So appeasing that, or even just going, okay, this is my reality, and then make a plan. And come at it with that sense of values, and then watch your mindset. So get the clarity. Get clear on exactly what's happening with your money right now, where you stand, whether it's with debt or how much money you have and what you're doing with it. And then make a plan, make a conscious plan in line with your values, so that you are taking control of your money and deciding what's happening. And then really look at your mindset. When you're doing that exercise, it's a great way to understand your money mindset. What language, how are you feeling in your body when you look at your finances? When you see certain transactions, does it make you feel physically sick, or does it make you feel happy? It will tell you, and how you feel about money, and taking note of that is really important. And it can be a bit of work, I will be honest, at first, but it's so freeing. It's so worthwhile, and it completely changes your whole, for some people have told me, their whole outlook on life.
Yeah. I've experienced this firsthand with those that I know, when it comes to them thinking about every last penny that they spend. They'll be out, everyone's having a good time, and it will cause some kind of just this angst inside them, and they make a different choice. Then you can see that it's not a choice that they want to be making, and it's awkward for everyone involved, and it's horrible, because that there's suffering happening at that point. And one thing you mentioned is that for men, this is particularly worse for. And in my experience, I've seen that also. And is that really because of that masculine, energetic nature of needing to protect and needing to provide? Does it come from that psychology, or is there more to it than that when it comes to the amount of pressure men face? Because I know that there's a high correlation towards men and finances, and high stress, chronic pain, and suicide rates.
Yes, it is. It's really dangerous. And I think, yes, to answer your question, it is rooted a lot in that masculinity, because money has evolved into this masculine thing. But there's a really amazing and interesting piece of research out of the US. A US bank did it, and it looked at how women are spoken to in the media when it comes to money articles, when they're targeted when money articles largely. Then you have how men are spoken to. So even if we take out and think about like the media that we are absorbing all of the time, and we take out our family, our culture, our geography, our socioeconomic, all of that kind of thing, this study in itself, I said, just shows it all. When men are spoken to when it comes to money, it's very powerful words. It's about earn as much as you can, provide for your family, be the man. The more money you earn, the better man that you are, and you have to do this and invest and be strong and take risks. And that kind of bigs them up to be like, this is how I am. This is a man that I am. Whereas women, it's about stop shopping, find discount codes, save a little, don't be frivolous, and just have a little bit on the side just in case. But basically leave it to the men. You just, rein in your shopping sprees and control your urges. So if you think about it, we're exposed to that on a constant basis from a young age. And then you throw on top of that all the cultural, all of the historical, men and women, how we have been treated. If you even think about, I've gone blank. The UK Stock Exchange. I've gone completely blank. Women were not allowed into the London Stock Exchange until the 1970s. Wow. Like, that's very recent. In a lot of regions, still all over the world, women are not allowed. What is that telling us? And what is that telling men? That in itself, I'm not considered eligible, good enough, wise enough, capable of managing the family assets. Yeah. So I can't inherit it, my mother will. Even in Ireland, they up until very recently, and even still happens. It still happens to this day. It's a family choice, but it still happens that the eldest boy in the family gets the family home in the inheritance. Wow. Goes to him. Yeah. So what's that telling the females and what's that telling the men? So the men are conditioned to, and then that's a lot of responsibility for them. I think sometimes we forget that, because I do focus largely on women, because I think we're hugely underserved when it comes to financial information that we can relate to, that we understand, that actually is meaningful to us. However, men carry so much weight, so much responsibility. And that's when it's not going well. It can be very tragic at times. And it's happened. I mean, it's happened to people I know where they just saw no way out. And it can really be attached to their self-worth. Yeah. If I'm not earning for my family, I'm not this, I'm not that. And it's dangerous. It really is, if we don't kind of acknowledge it, because sometimes it's so subconscious. And then you can imagine it causes the issues in relationships between men and women. Yeah. Because he's coming at it from his masculine energy. And I did a corporate wellness workshop recently, and it was really interesting because it was about 2/3 women, 1/3 men. And I asked a question at one point, I put it out to everyone in the room: what does money mean to you? What is money? And the women reported security, independence, freedom, dignity. The men, social construct, what I need to get ahead, and something else quite practical. I said, there you go. So you try to get in a room, it says it all. So a man is coming at that conditioning and that belief system that money is a tool, that I need to get ahead, and it shows how good I am, how successful I am. And a woman's coming at it going, well, it makes me feel secure. It's very emotional to me. And I'm feeling very insecure and vulnerable here because I've never been taught about money. Investing feels very masculine and I'm not actually okay with it. And they try to have a conversation about family finances. Yeah. And if they don't see each other's perspective, is it any wonder it causes arguments? And it's a problem if we don't. And they're the sessions I love doing a lot, actually, the women and men and money, because from a relationship perspective, that's where I get women, especially at the end, and men as well, actually going, I can't wait to go home and talk to my husband about this now. What is our value system when it comes to money in our household? And I'm interested to know now, that's why he behaves like that when we talk about money. Because I know now in his childhood, this, I get it now. And you come at it's more, and vice versa. oh, it's not that she doesn't understand, or she doesn't, it's because, I get it. Now we can have an easier conversation, an open conversation, and it changes relationships.
Yeah, it will change the attitude towards money and towards those situations where perhaps one person's overspent or wants to spend on this and the other one doesn't. Like the whole attitude and the level of consideration just increases drastically, and level of understanding. And obviously that's important for any relationship. So to then address those stressors from a place of compassion, understanding, and openness is really important. But I guess there has to be, first and foremost, a safe space, without that sounding too cliche and too fluffy for anyone listening, is that there has to be an element of security and safety to be able to open that dialogue and to be able to actually expose it. And my concern is in the workplace is that it's not being spoken about, like we said, even though it's one of the places we spend most of our time. And it's fine, you don't have to tell everybody the ins and outs of all of your finances, but to open the conversation through a workshop, so with like yourself, helps to create a space where men can talk about their emotions around it, when women can really openly share what's on their mind and learn the literacy that perhaps has been missing all this time. But there has to be the environment created for it. How important is that in your eyes?
Oh, it's so important. And, even not just that men can share their emotions, that men are often unaware that there is an emotional element to it. For them, it's very practical, very often. That's a generalization, but it's the reality. So even just opening their eyes to go, oh, there is an emotional side to money here that I hadn't even thought about before. They'll be feeling it, but maybe unaware of it. And creating that space where it's okay to talk about money. And even in the relationships in work, and again, it's not just couples who benefit from this. Colleagues will benefit from this, where they will understand each other more. And in my workshops, we don't ever talk about personal circumstances. And I personally don't think that we need to be sharing what our salaries are. We don't need to be saying what our personal finances are. That can stay very private. It's still a very vulnerable space for us. But what we can do is be able to say, I'm quite stressed about money right now, or I'm feeling this, or this has happened. And therefore, this is why I do. Or like to your example, like we might have a lunch out with your colleagues. And if they can understand why one person is saying, no, I'm not going to lunch because I'm saving money for this, it's important to me because. And then you can just accept that rather than judging them to go, well, why you spend your money in that way? That's ridiculous. You should be doing this. This is more important. So it allows the communication and the dialogue between colleagues and things that might not necessarily before have been attached to money, but actually are. And I think it reduces the judgment and the expectations of each other. And it just rebuilds relationships. And especially when it comes to different cultures as well, if we can get in a room when you've got men, women, cultures, age groups, and people are sharing safe experiences, again, people get really interested and they think, because they find it really interesting, thankfully. When we get into that space, people do think, oh, because it's new. I never thought of it like that before. And you can relate back to myself, and it's understanding that person more. The more we can understand each other, the better for all parts of our life, work, personal, everything. So yeah, I love it when companies do let me come in with that mindset piece of it, not just here's how to get out of debt, which is very helpful. Don't get me wrong, that's great. But here's how to get out of debt. And let's talk about why you got into debt in the first place. What emotions might have driven you to make the decisions that you did so that you don't get into that same situation again.
So, and this is why it is a pillar of wellness and not just something that stands alone, right? Because it really does influence everything. Like we truly believe that nothing works in silo anyway. But when it comes to our well-being, like everything is intertwined. But finances, it will impact our mental health. It'll impact our levels of social connection and our ability to feel safe. It will impact our emotional well-being. It impacts our environment and our environmental wellness. There's so many facets that sometimes finance gets missed off the list, and it's essential that it needs to be part of that well-being story because it's fundamental. I think it's absolutely foundational.
It's foundational. And actually, I believe, and I might be a little bit biased, but I believe that like it underpins all of it. If you think about it, like I talk about emergency funds, for example, if I put it like this. So, and I actually prefer to call them cash cushions, because who wants to save for an emergency, right? That's not very motivating. That's actually really generating stress. I need to put money aside because something bad's going to happen. A cash cushion is money I have there that gives me freedom. That's like, oh, if something happens, I can pay for it. I'm good. I'm fine. Whew. My nervous system gets, immediately to think and it's a great way if you are stressed and you think, oh, something has happened. Well, how am I going to pay for this? That's okay. The money's there. It's okay. The money's there. I can deal with it. So when we have that sense of like calmness, then we're making decisions less out of lack and fear and more out of that kind of conscious way. And if you think about it, what are those decisions in other aspects of wellness? Can I go to the fitness class? Can I do the meditation class? What level of groceries can I buy? Can I buy organic or can I do this? Can I socialize with my friends? That's social connection. That's so important. Can I socialize with my friends? Do I have the money to do that? Like if we think about all of these things, like even, get good sleep, having healthy habits. If I want good sleep, then I want a good sleeping environment. That means a nice mattress that I have to pay for. All of these things, money does help us to either enhance them, or it's going to hold us back, or it's going to feed into, I bought the nice mattress, but oh my goodness, it was so expensive. I couldn't afford this. And then if you're lying on that mattress thinking, I spent so much money on this mattress, this is crazy. And so, okay, I planned this, it's conscious, it's in line with my values, because one of my values is to be healthy and whatever that might be. And sleeping is a big part of that. And I'm investing my money in that. And I am so grateful that I had the money to do it. And you lie on that mattress and go, this is amazing. Money helped me achieve this good thing in my life. That's the difference. And money impacts pretty much all of it.
It does. Yeah, absolutely it does. I can't think of one thing that it doesn't impact.
Yeah, it's almost because even people say, oh, well, if I go to the beach, that's free. I'm like, well, how do you get there? What do you wear? Do you eat while you're there? Even if you bring groceries,
are you too busy earning money?
What's that?
You have time to go, or are you too busy earning money?
Yeah, exactly. Or you're too stressed when you're there because you're worrying about money. There's almost nothing like that. Even like, sleeping, but you're sleeping in a room with air conditioning and the clothes that you're wearing and the bed linen that you're lying in, the mattress that you paid for. So money impacts.
And we're not even talking about being rich here. We're talking about having enough money to, like you said, start living in alignment to what we value.
Yeah.
You don't have to have the most expensive mattress. You have to have the one that fits your body, in your shape, in what your needs are. It fascinates me how kind of full circle this is, how intertwined it all is. Let's get even more practical. So you talked about first of all, taking the courage to look behind gain clarity.
Yeah.
Talked about then having a plan. What could a plan look like? And I get that it would be different for everybody, but are there any rules of thumb that are very practical for anyone listening?
Yes, my favorite one. So I often get asked, how much should I spend on my housing? How much should I be spending on whatever that might be? I personally love the 50-20-30 rule. So, I didn't make this up. It's been there for years. What it does is I actually call it a benchmark. I use it as a starting point. So if I'm working with someone and we're looking at their finances, we'll categorize everything and then say, okay, how are you going against the 50-20-30 rule? And what that is it suggests that up to 50% of our income is dedicated to our needs. So our basic needs, our housing, our food, our electricity, things that we have to spend money on to survive. Now, how much we spend on it can be discretionary, but they become our fixed costs very soon. We buy a house and the mortgage is set. We rent a house, the rental is set for a period of time. So up to 50% on our needs, up to 30% on our wants, or some people call it the fun things. So things that we want to do, but we don't actually have to. Eating out, food delivery, travel, health and fitness classes. They might be a strong value for us, so we can have high priority wants, but we actually could live without them. Maybe not be as happy, but we won't die. Then you have at least 20% on traditionally what was called savings. What I prefer to say is your future self. Something that my future self is going to benefit from. Because savings, again, it's a common question I get, like, well, what are savings? Like, is savings investment? Is savings this? So I would say my future self. So maybe it's up to 20% paying off my debt, saving towards that emergency fund or cash cushion, saving towards your retirement, saving towards a deposit for a home, something. But we need to, I would recommend you need to make sure that that future self is something that's important to you. Going back to giving it a purpose, give those savings a purpose, not just money in the bank. So money in the bank is not going to ease your nervous system. It won't, because it'll never be enough. It has to be that money in the bank gives me the sense of security that if anything happened, my family are taken care of. I can go home when I need to. I can pay for the car if the engine blows up. I can. Or I'm saving towards a house that's important to me to provide security for my family so that we can have a nice home and environment to live in. That's what that money is doing. So that, and then do that for a year. And that, because when you do the clarity piece that I mentioned earlier, you get a good insight into what you're happy with, where your money is going, what you're not happy with. Your value system will bubble to the forefront. Because when you start looking at, I spent all that money on, and that could be anything. I'm in the UAE. We're in the UAE. One of the number one costs I see on when we do this analysis is eating out. And there's a lot of that's connection. We eat out with friends and family because it's connection, given where we are, we're largely expats. But very often people will go, I had no idea I'm spending that much money. It adds up to that. Like I had one family who said, no, eating out for us is probably like maximum 2,000 a month, maximum. And when we did it, it was 6. They were horrified. They were shocked. Like, how is it that much? In their head, it was just lunch. They're like, it's the breakfast, it's the coffees, it's the dinners here and there, it's all of these everyone's that they just didn't even register. But their value system was like, we don't need to do that. This is madness. Let's reduce that to put the money somewhere else. So do that practical, that cash flow plan with that in mind. Another family were the same, and actually, interestingly, theirs was as well about 6,000 a month. They were like, we're happy with that, because for us, that's when we see our friends, we connect as a family, we play card games around the table. We're happy to invest that amount of money given the income that we are and our priorities in life. Fine. So in their cash flow plan, they will have 6,000 a month. The other family will be like, no, 2,000 is enough for us, and we'll manage that. And do it with that premise and plan that out for 12 months. And what that will do for you on a practical level, it will give you clarity. You are taking control of your money. You are telling it what to do. It's not controlling you. You are putting it there tangible. So it's no more kind of, I don't really know what's happening and I'm constantly reacting. My car insurance is due in April every year, so I'm going to start saving for that now. My annual travel costs this amount, and I want to keep doing that because that's important to us. So I'm going to start saving for that amount to be spent next July. I'm going to start planning for that now. So you have that sense of, I'm in control. Then clarity, where you might be hemorrhaging. And honestly, it's the best thing. And to me, it's like a manifestation tool, because I'm putting it out there. This is what I want to happen with my money. It's practical. I can put it, some people print them out and put them on their wall. And I'm deciding. And that's why I call it a cash flow plan as well. It's a budget, right? Like if you want to talk technical terms, that's your budget, but a budget feels restrictive, right? A budget's like, you've done something wrong. I've been put on a money diet. I'm shamed. I'm on a budget. I don't have enough. It's lack. It's like, no one wants a budget. Whereas a cash flow plan, same thing. But a cash flow plan with a different mindset is I'm planning and my money is going to flow through my life and do what I want it to do. And I'm deciding. Yeah. And that's the difference.
It's amazing that just by the reframing of what you call those budgets makes a difference. So I've always called that social piece like the fun fund. That's my fun fund. We've got a wealth building fund, which is for investments and things like that. Then we've got like our living fund, which is like our day-to-day stuff, like you said, cost of living. What's missing in there? There's one more that you mentioned. But it's not that relevant, but it just changes the mindset. Like it takes away any guilt from spending money on. And that I found that personally like really, really, really powerful, because it was like I didn't have to think twice. I didn't have to feel guilty for choosing that over that, because I understood now, and it's like, okay, that makes sense for me. And it's like, okay, now I've got like no fear of missing out. I'm quite enjoying the fact that you do your thing and I'll go do my thing, whereas before, when I was younger and probably a bit more naive, I would have like tried to stretch myself to go and to do that thing, to be involved. And actually, the more I got to know myself throughout the process, it helped me to live more authentically and more aligned. And that's ultimately where our sense of meaning comes from.
And that's where I think that's exactly that is where your sense of meaning comes from. And that's where you feel happier, you're more fulfilled, and you're not keeping up with the Joneses, which, you know, we're all young and we do, and we're figuring out what we like and we don't like. But you do get to the point where if you are constantly still going out because you feel you should, and then that's causing you financial stress and you're actually not enjoying it, that's when we get into that negative cycle. Whereas this is where people don't realize, like, because how important the money element is in it. And a lot of my clients will say, you know, I thought, Carol, actually we were going to be working on budgets. This is a whole deeper, you know, more impactful thing than we ever imagined, in a positive way, thankfully, because it does allow you to then to sit in that. And in that situation, like, there can be a case of, let's say you ended up with a lot of debt. You know, I have individuals who say, I have a lot of debt, I'm struggling to pay it off. And I'm always torn between, I put myself on a budget and I say, I'm going to spend less and I'm not going to go out. And then my friends call me, you know, like if you're young and in Dubai, for example, or, you know, you've just arrived or anywhere really in the world and you want a social life. And then my friends will call me and say, oh, we're going to brunch or we're going to this, do you want to come? And it's very hard to say no. It's very hard to say no in that situation, and have it explained, and the peer pressure and all the rest. Whereas I sit with that individual and I say, okay, like, let's do your cash flow plan. What do you want to do with your money? How much do you want to dedicate to socializing in this case? And then what are you going to do with the money that you're not spending? What are you going to do with it? What's it for? Let's say in that case, it's to pay off debt. And it's not even just to pay off debt, because again, who wants to pay off credit card debt? It's not motivating. It's a bit like that emergency fund. It's like, oh, I don't even know what I spent. Usually they're like, it's usually a lifestyle thing. I don't even know where that money went. Now I'm just putting it into a black hole that I'd rather go out with my friends. I'm just going to go, you know, whereas if we look at it and go, right, when you pay off that debt, how is your life going to be then? What is that going to give your future self? So when that debt is gone, you're not going to have the stress. You're not going to have that amount coming out of your money every month. And you're going to have a sense of achievement. And that extra, let's say 500 a month, what will you do with that extra money when you then have no longer got debt and you're feeling freer and less stressed? That's when they sit there when their friends call and go, are you coming? Say, actually, no. Because I would rather spend that 500 building towards that future self that I'm so excited about. The debt's the bit in the middle, than go out now and then feel guilty about it tomorrow. And it helps people live more aligned as well. And then when they do go out with their friends and they've budgeted for that amount, like exactly you said, they enjoy it more. There's no guilt. They're free. They're like, I planned everything. I'm all organized. I can spend this money here and I can just forget about the money and enjoy myself.
Exactly. And then you can really be present and actually enjoy what you're doing, rather than be physically there but mentally somewhere else, or living with that like shame hangover the next day because you didn't stick to your own word. And that obviously, when we don't and we lean into the healthier approach that you've just described, you know, confidence increases drastically.
Oh yeah.
And there's so many benefits to that. You know, I've seen people go through a similar journey and then they've suddenly met the person that they were supposed to meet because they've made they're in alignment with them, and now they're in a really happy romantic relationship, or they've had the confidence to apply for the job that they wanted to do, or to
attract more money.
Exactly.
It's amazing when you step out of that sense of lack and fear and control with money, and then because all you wanted was more money, and then you let that go, and then you live a different way, and then money arrives. You're like, oh. Like, I love getting the voicemails and the text messages from people going, you'll never believe this has happened. I'm like, God, actually I do believe it. But yeah, it's great, because then when you sit in that alignment, like you said, then the true authentic things arrive, and very often that is more money, but without the stress. And that's when it's again adding to your life more.
Exactly. And one thing I really want to iterate is everything you talked about today is for every human being.
Yes.
Almost like, except extreme poverty, obviously. Like what we're talking about here is true for everyone. You know, particularly those living here in the UAE, you know, we are lucky, we are privileged. You know, you don't see much homelessness and things like that. We're in a place where actually we're living very comfortably compared to other places in the world. But all of the principles that you've spoken about today are true for people that have lots of money, that are struggling and perhaps don't have it, and same for people that don't have much money at all. And between.
and everything in between. But I think that, absolutely, because I often get asked, like, there's sometimes an assumption that I only work with high net worth individuals. But or how with corporates, like, how do we, sometimes they're like, well, our employees are earning in a certain bracket, like, are they really going to benefit from this? And I constantly say, it's not about what you earn, it's about what you do. So it's not about the amount of zeros in your bank, it's about what you're doing with what you currently have. But I do want to touch on as well, we are in the UAE and we do often have a huge opportunity to be quite comfortable. But I think there is a large percentage of people here who are really struggling. And debt is a major, major problem here among expats. And I think what as well we need to acknowledge, I think companies need to acknowledge as well, that we often don't, is living here, we don't have the safety net. And that drives financial fear, that sense of insecurity. If I was in Ireland and I lost my job, there's social welfare, I could move in with my parents, I have options. Yeah. If I lose my job here or something bad happens, what happens? And that can often drive the financial stress as well. That sense of, I need to save, I need to save, I need to save, I need to save, I need to do better. That I think we don't often actually acknowledge here as well.
Yeah. And that's when we see situations like people leaving their cars abandoned at the airport and leaving, never coming back to this region again, and having to make that life choice. Because their hand has almost been forced to. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm sure there hopefully it's the minority of people that do that intentionally, but I think on the most part, nobody wants to get to that place. And
no,
you can influence it.
Yeah, exactly. No one wants to get there. And I think as well, another thing that we need to, really talk about more is supporting people who are there. Because like you said, very, very small percentage do it deliberately. It's largely circumstance, just maybe lack of financial literacy, lack of understanding of decisions, being vulnerable and manipulated. That happens a lot. Just not really understanding the consequences of their decisions on their finances. And then someone gets into that situation where they're like, I'm in a hole, what do I do? Too embarrassed to tell anyone. I have a lot of individuals, who are here, who are working with me because they say, I'm constantly being told by my friends, surely you must be loaded, very rich, you're ready to retire. You've been working here a long time and a good salary, and they are drowning in debt.
Yeah.
Behind the scene, and they're like, I can't tell them, I'm too embarrassed. Like, they would literally be, and say, unfortunately, I did try to talk to someone, and their response is, how could you be so stupid? This kind of language. How did you manage to do that? And then the person retreats more because they're shamed. They're already shaming themselves. They don't need external shaming as well. And usually it is emotional reasons that drive it, that I think we need to be very, very compassionate and empathetic about. And that's when exactly they feel like they've no way out. They leave. And it's not good for the employer. It's not good for the country. It's not good for banks. And it's not good for that person because they're living with that for the rest of their lives. And very few people can just let that go.
Yeah.
It's there.
Yeah. Shame is one of the heaviest emotions that we can experience. And once that's it's a tricky one to shake, but it is doable with compassionate, supportive people, particularly with your skill set that can help to guide somebody through that. With anybody that's listening to this that can really resonate with what you're sharing there around debt, is there anything extra that they need to know when it comes to practical implementation of some of the things you've already mentioned?
So if you have credit card debt, this is one I regularly talk about. In credit card debt in this region, in the UAE, is extremely expensive. I mean, it's expensive worldwide. It's the number one cause of consumer debt worldwide, consumer credit cards. But here you're looking at sometimes well over 50% interest. So sometimes people will ask me, I've got credit card debt, I've got a loan, and I've got maybe, I owe some people money, and with debt zero interest, who should I pay off first? I would always urge people to really look at the credit card piece, because I think it's wildly misunderstood how credit cards work, how expensive they are. Sometimes they'll say, but it's only 2.99%. That's per month. Multiply that by 12. That's your true interest rate. Look at your credit card and see how much interest you are paying every month. And I know that can be a tough pill to swallow, but it's a motivation and again, clarity. Now you know. If you do have a lot of debt and you're feeling a bit overwhelmed by it, again, get the clarity. There is always a way out. but get clarity, map out exactly what it is. What do you have on your credit cards? What are the interest rates per credit card? Do you have loans? What are the interest rates? What are the terms? Look at your cost of living. Is there anywhere you can reduce? Look at your income. Is there anywhere you can increase? Is there anywhere you can get access to extra cash? And then make a plan. Make a plan that, again, you want to have the end goal there. So map out all of your, and if you, all of your debts, how much you can put off each debt per month, how long it will then take you to pay it off. And then go back again to that. What will you do when it's paid off? You need that motivation. You need something to keep you going. But very often, you know, we bury our head in the sands when it comes to debt. I've had a lot of people say to me here, you know, oh, my credit card, I don't understand it. No matter what money I put off it, it just never seems to go away. I've given up. I've given up. And then it's just spiraling and it's getting bigger and bigger. It doesn't go away. It doesn't go away. So focus on credit card debt and be very, very careful of credit cards. In general, always pay them off in full. They're amazing tools. I love mine. I use mine. I pay everything on it like my debit card, but I pay it off in full every month and I get amazing benefits with my credit card. But it's only benefits if you're paying it off in full every month, because that's another misconception that I hear here that I don't hear in other regions, and it's from all nationalities here, but I think the communication maybe that you only need to pay the minimum balance on your credit card every month.
Mm-hmm.
Have to pay it off in full. I think there's a lot of language out there. If you only need to pay off your minimum balance every month to avoid the late payment fee and to protect your credit card score to a certain extent, it does not protect you from interest.
Yeah. That's exactly the scenario I was in about 10 years ago, and I ended up getting a loan to pay off the credit card because the interest rate was better, and immediately cut up the credit cards. Never had a credit card since. Until, actually that's not true, until about maybe 4 or 5 years ago, I then got a credit card again in the way that you've described, but I had to have a period with not having one. And
that's a good idea, just to, yes, if you do have credit card debt and get it like a consolidation loan, what we mentioned earlier is then take a period of time without using that credit card, work on your financial habits, upgrade your financial literacy, understand how you got into the situation that you did. And then when it's a bit like when you're fit and ready again and you're healthy again, then you can reintroduce the credit card in a healthier manner. It's not like some people would say, never, ever, ever, ever. Well, you know, credit cards have a lot of benefits, but they need to be used consciously in a fit and healthy way. And they're amazing things. But yeah, it is, I call it financial quicksand. If you're trying to pay off a credit card and you're not understanding that element of how much interest you're actually paying and how expensive it is that sense of like, oh, I'm fighting, and I just keep drowning. The harder I fight, the worse it gets. So it's, and it's very common. I will say to anyone who's sitting there thinking it's only me, it's not.
Yeah.
It's extremely common from every walk of life, every level of education, every level of career progression. You might be surprised by those of you around you who are dealing with this, but are too embarrassed to admit it.
And the good news is listening to a conversation like this and going and following your work is that they're at a choice point. Then, you know, you can't unknow what you know now. Yes, you can choose to put your head in the sand, and that might feel easier in the short term, but in the long term, it's only going to come back to bite you. So I really appreciate the work that you do out in the world, but particularly in this region, because it's absolutely necessary. Carol, is there anything that you haven't mentioned? And I know you've mentioned a lot already, and you've shared so many insights that will be useful, but is there anything that you think our listeners really need to hear when it comes to financial wellness?
I think we have talked about a lot, haven't we? We went quite broad, which is great. I think, you know, really it is about, it's worth it. You know, I will say investing time in this is self-care. You know, you really are doing your future self a massive, massive benefit. You will be glad regardless of where you're sitting, even if you're someone who feels quite comfortable. You know, there is so many elements of financial wellness that we can improve on, and it will help. And it will help your relationships. It will help your stress levels. You know, there's so many additional benefits that when we look at our finances and feel more in control of them and feel financially well, it impacts our relationships, our eating, our sleeping, our exercise. Like it really is worth that foundational that benefit that we get to our basic, our decision-making foundation. So, but also be kind to yourself. I think that would probably be the biggest thing. If you're doing this and you're scared and you're afraid of what you'll see, be aware of the negative self-talk. Be kind to yourself. As we say, when we know better, we do better. And we can really sometimes only do better when we look under that hood. So, but there's enough negativity out there. Do it with that view of, okay, it's time to look at this. It's okay what happened in the past. I'll learn from it. And my future self will thank me. So, yeah.
100%. Amazing. Carol, thank you so much. I've got one last question for you. It's the same question I ask all of our listeners. So for every listen this podcast gets, a donation is made towards one of the 2030 global goals. We do this so to demonstrate how we can perhaps use some financial wellness to be able to actually support big causes and help companies as well or encourage them to fulfill and contribute to their corporate social responsibilities by linking simple actions of what they perhaps already do inside their business to be able to then be a force for good elsewhere. So you've chosen the goal of life below water to support this episode. Why is that so important to you?
I'm heavily influenced by my children. So we talk a lot in this household about, sea life. I mean, I love scuba diving. I love swimming. I love being by the sea and the ocean. And we do in this house feel very passionate about recycling and cleaning up the oceans and the damage that's happened there. And that is why. So, yeah, it's just something that as a family, we feel very passionate about cleaning up our seas.
Amazing. And that has a knock-on effect to so many other of the goals, in the same way that finance has a knock-on effect to all of the other areas of our human experience. So what a great choice. Thank you so much, Carol. We'll make sure all of the links to where our listeners can find you are in the show notes. But is there anywhere in particular you would like to signpost them to now to come and follow your work?
I am quite active on LinkedIn under my own name, Carol Glynn. I'm active also on Instagram. It's where I post most of my tips and advice on awareness videos on personal finance. So on my website, of course, consciousfinancecoaching.com.
Amazing. I wish I'd met you when I was at school probably, but I probably wouldn't have paid attention at least until I was at least 18. But I wish I'd have known what you teach now then. So I think if anybody is, and I'm sure there's still a lot I can learn from you, and I've no doubt our listeners can as well. So please go and follow Carol. She's got everything you need when it comes to financial wellness. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much.
Today's episode was hosted by myself, Charlotte Stebbing-Mills, the co-founder of The Wellness Theory. If you enjoyed this episode, please do subscribe and share with someone who may benefit and be part of our mission to help people realise when they're healthy and well, they can be a force for good in the world. I just wanted to share some more about our partner, B1G1. B1G1 is a global movement that enables businesses to incorporate effective impact creation into their everyday activities in a simple and powerful way. Through B1G1, businesses can choose from a wide range of verified projects around the world and integrate these impacts into their business operations. The core concept of B1G1 is that every business transaction or interaction can be directly linked to making a positive impact in our world, whether it's providing access to clean water, supporting education, planting trees, or addressing social issues. B1G1 enables businesses of all types to make a real difference. To find out more about them, visit their website at b1g1.com. Until next time, be well, mean well, and make a difference that lasts. See you in the next episode.